everybody, welcome to our Industry Insight session this afternoon on careers and property. My name is Jennifer Thompson, and I'm an Employer Liaison and Project Officer with the Careers Service here at UWS. I just want to start off the meeting or the session this afternoon by explaining that I am recording the session. Now I'm happy to stop recording if anybody wants me to do so, but we do have a couple of students that aren't able to attend, so the plan is to record and make it available to other students. Can anybody just let me know either in the chat function or just shout out if they're not happy with that, because I don't want anyone feeling uncomfortable leaving the session. Okay, it's up to you obviously if you want to have your cameras on or not. Okay, so thank you everybody for attending this afternoon. Today's session, as I said, it's careers in property, and we have two guest speakers that I'd like to introduce. So Rachel Dunn is an associate real estate lawyer with Dentons, who are the world's largest law firm. She's based in their Glasgow office, and she's also the regional chair of Women in Property for Central Scotland. And we also are joined by Vanessa Lancaster, who is Student Awards Coordinator for Women in Property. So that they'll go on and talk much more about the association, but their network links members to fellow professionals across sectors and across the UK. So we're delighted to have them here today. So my role at the university is to work with local employers to build networks and participate in events and initiatives like the Industry Insight sessions to help develop students' employability skills and experience. And the aims of today's session is to talk about the role of women in property, talk about the different opportunities for career opportunities in the property sector, and also how you can benefit from the resources and events of women in property. We're going to be breaking for questions partway through the session after about 20 minutes. But if you do have any questions that you want to ask sort of during the session, then you can type that into the chat function and I'll be keeping an eye on that. I think pretty much everybody's on mute at the moment, so if you can just keep yourself on mute, that's really helpful, just while our speakers are talking. And like I said, it's entirely up to you if you want to keep your cameras on or not. So I think that's everything from me, and I'm going to hand over now to Rachel.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully everyone can now see my slides, or not my slides. Hang on. Can you see my slides? No?
Just loading, I think. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so as I said, thank you very much, Jennifer, for that introduction and for inviting us along today. And thank you as well to all of you for dialing in today. Before I dive into the main kind of presentation, I thought I should introduce myself and tell you a bit about my education and my career to date. So, can you see the next slide? Yeah. So, as Jennifer said, my name is Rachel Dunn and I'm an associate in the Dentons real estate team in Glasgow. I completed my undergraduate degree and my diploma in legal practice at Glasgow University. In my honours year, I studied a course called Commercial Missives, which related basically to the buying and selling of commercial property. That course was taught by Robert Rennie, who essentially wrote all of the books that there are on Scottish property law. So as well as being an absolute genius, he was a very big character, and he often kind of digressed into various different stories about his clients and deals he'd been working on, and they were always very entertaining. So he was the first lecturer that I had that really brought property law to life for me. It really brought the law to life for me, to be honest, and you could see how what you were learning in university could be applied practically in a job. So off the back of enjoying his class so much, I pretty much decided that I wanted to be in property. So I left university full of enthusiasm for property and went out into the job market, and at that time it was 2011. And let me tell you, the property market was very, very tough at that time. We were just coming out of the other side of the recession, and there were very, very few jobs available. So after a while, I managed to secure a property-specific trainee with a traineeship, with a medium-sized, very well-regarded firm called Semple Fraser. And I was due to start that the year after I finished university, which suited me quite well because it meant I could take a year out and travel, secure in the knowledge that I would be coming back to a job. Then in spring 2012, I got a call from Semple Fraser to ask if I could delay the start of my traineeship by another year, which at the time was kind of okay because I was quite happy to go travelling again and wait another year before starting my real job. Then in spring 2013, I got a text message from a friend with a photograph of a headline in a local newspaper, which said that Semple Fraser was going into administration. So after having waited for 2 years to start my traineeship, I was now faced with the prospect of being back at square one and applying for jobs all over again, which was pretty devastating at the time, to be honest. But thankfully, I didn't need to wait too long. And within about 10 days of Semple Fraser going into administration, I had a call from Macleay Murray Spence. They told me that the property team at Semple Fraser had all moved across to Macleay's and that they had a traineeship for me there if I wanted it. So I obviously jumped at the chance. I didn't need to re-interview, so I eventually started working with Macleay's in September 2013, and I did feel like a fraud, to be honest with you, because I'd never been in the Macleay's offices before. I hadn't interviewed for them, and I definitely hadn't looked at a law book for about 2 years, so it very much felt like starting again from scratch. But the reason why I thought it was kind of helpful to explain all that to you is because I know probably right now with COVID and everything, the job market's not as great as we all hope it would be. So I guess it was probably helpful for me to explain my background and how I managed to eventually get a graduate job, which was not in any way plain sailing, and hopefully give you all a bit of hope that things will work out for you too as well eventually. So anyway, I started at Macleay's in 2013, and I was a trainee. You do eight-month seats in 3 different departments, and luckily by sheer chance again, my first seat was in the commercial property department. And thankfully by that point the market had really picked up and we were absolutely run off our feet. I think a lot of people in the department I know said that they had never been busier even before the crash. They were absolutely mobbed in 2013, which worked out pretty well for me because I was given a lot of responsibility, and it really gave me the opportunity to get my teeth involved in some really, really big deals that I probably wouldn't otherwise get an opportunity to get involved in as part of my traineeship. So I'm guessing most people on this call are based kind of in and around Glasgow, hopefully. And hopefully you all know Buchanan Street. So one of the big deals that I did as a trainee was the Lush store in Buchanan Street and the Keels store in Buchanan Street. I was involved in putting in place the leases for both those stores. And I used to walk past those stores every day on my way home from work and feel very proud that I had been involved in putting those leases in place. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I really like about property. You can see it. So you can walk past like a shop or a hotel or an office or student accommodation, whatever it is, and know that your work played a part in either developing that building or buying or selling that building or putting in place that tenant. And it's just so visible. And I think, yeah, I think that's something to be proud of. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I like property. After my traineeship, so your traineeship is 2 years. After that, I accepted a newly qualified position in the commercial property team at Macleay's. And then in 2016, I requalified as an English solicitor, which is, to be honest with you, pretty intense. Looking back now, I'm not really sure how I managed it. But you work full time and you essentially study in evenings and weekends for about a year until you qualify. So yeah, that was kind of 2017, I think, that I qualified into English law. And then towards the end of 2017, Dentons merged with Macleay's. And I'm still with Dentons to this day. Still in the commercial property team, although it's now been kind of rebranded as real estate. So that's kind of about my career with Dentons. I just wanted to touch on as well women in property. I joined the amazing organisation that is Women in Property as a member after being introduced through a colleague of mine in London who also worked for Dentons at the time. And then in 2019, I became a member of the Central Scotland Branch Committee. So on the committee, we meet monthly and you essentially help organise events or anything else that we seem to be organising at the time. So you'll get involved with the student awards. We also have a mentor programme, which we'll talk a wee bit about later. And we also have a schools outreach programme going in to see first and second year pupils. So you get involved in all of that on the committee, which is great. I then became vice chair in 2019. And in March 2020, I became the Central Scotland branch chair. So the chairmanship runs for a year. So my first day as chair was the 1st of March 2020, and I'll be handing over to Lorna Banks, who's a quantity surveyor at Gleeds, at the end of this month. So it's obviously been a bit of an unusual year to be chair, given that it pretty much exactly coincides with the start of COVID. And yeah, so it's been a different year, but there's definitely been some benefits to it, which I'll come on to talk about in a minute. So that's definitely enough about me. I'm going to go on now to tell you a bit more about Dentons. I don't think we've got any lawyers on the call, Jennifer. I think that's right, isn't it? Mm-hmm. No. Yes. Okay, so I'll keep the Dentons part relatively brief. But as Jennifer has already said, Dentons is the largest law firm in the world. We've got more than 10,000 lawyers across over 175 locations. And this map here that hopefully you can see on the slide shows all of the different locations. So it gives you a kind of idea of how large they really are. They're literally in pretty much every single country you can imagine. In terms of Real Estate UK, we have over 200 people in the Real Estate UK team. We sit across 4 offices. So we're Glasgow, Edinburgh, London and Milton Keynes. I'm now going to move on to tell you a bit about what Dentons does. So hopefully I'll move to the next slide. Yeah. We're a full service commercial law firm and we cover every area of commercial law you can imagine. So from transactional stuff to litigation. And for example, we have employment, tax, planning, construction, and of course, real estate departments. On this slide, I have put like a kind of bubble diagram and I've put in there various different real estate areas which we are involved with. And I'm just going to pick out a few of them and touch on the different careers that are kind of included in those areas. So the first one that jumps out at me is construction. At a basic level, as a construction lawyer, you put in place the various different contracts and subcontracts that require to be put in place for a development to get out of the ground. And in general, you would have a main contractor, and then you would have more specialist subcontractors for specific jobs on site. So for example, an M&E contractor who installs the mechanical and electrical systems in the building. And you also need someone in place to manage all of these different contractors and subcontractors. So you would generally also have a project manager that would manage every site as well, and every development. The next thing I wanted to touch on is retail and hotels and leisure, which are in one of the bubbles on that slide. This is a specific segment of the real estate market. And generally we would either be involved in buying and selling these specific properties or putting in leases for these properties. I'd obviously already mentioned Lush and Kiehl's, who are obviously in the retail space. We also act for a number of hotels and leisure companies. We've got a big cinema client who we do a lot of work for. And before it gets to the point that we were putting in place the legal documents, an agent would put in place what's called heads of terms. So for example, Savills, I don't know if any of you have heard of Savills, but they are actually a national sponsor of the Women in Property Student Awards, which Vanessa is going to talk about a bit later. And an agent like Savills essentially brokers the deal, produces the heads of terms, which contain kind of basic deal terms. So if, for example, it's a lease, they'll detail what the rent should be, what the duration should be, if there's to be any breaks, anything like that. They send the heads of terms on to us, and then we draft the legal documents off the back of those. Another thing that an agent like Savills would do is deal with ongoing asset management and property management. So once you've got the lease in place, the tenants in the building, there will be rent reviews required to be carried out under the lease, and also the tenant might want to do certain works to the property which require landlord's consent. So the agent would generally deal with those kind of requests, pull together simple heads of terms or instructions, send them to us, and then we will document the actual legal documents that put in place the terms that the agents have agreed. So that's a bit on that particular sector. Another one I wanted to pick up on this slide, or actually it's kind of two, but they're similar categories, is industrial and logistics, transport and infrastructure. Particularly logistics, that's a huge kind of big ticket item at the moment that a lot of people in the property world are talking about. Logistics is essentially Amazon and other big retailers like that. They need, as I'm sure you can imagine, huge purpose-built warehouses. And a lot of the transactional work that's been going on in the property market recently has been to acquire these very large areas of land for development. As well as requiring a large area, they also require excellent transport links, so that they can accommodate the large commercial vehicles that need to go to and from the warehouses. So there's a lot to think about in terms of transport and infrastructure, which involves a lot of work from engineers, and the development process itself obviously involves planning consultants and architects as well. I'm told that actually designing these big warehouses isn't the most exciting job for architects. As I'm sure you can imagine, they're pretty much just huge big square boxes, but it's great that when, you know, maybe hotel development is on a decline just now, there are other areas such as logistics that are keeping people in the property market busy. So it's good to kind of have that to fall back on. I also wanted to touch briefly on renewables, which we've got in there, and we've obviously got a picture there of the the wind farm as well. I do think that once we recover from COVID, there's going to be renewed focus on renewables, because of the government's net zero carbon commitment, which is to meet by 2045. So the property industry, which you might not have necessarily thought of before, we're actually heavily involved in renewables. There's a lot of property work that needs to be done around that. Kind of similar to logistics, they require huge areas of land in order to have these solar farms or wind farms, whatever it is. So we will be involved in buying and selling the land, or quite often what actually happens with these solar farms is rather than acquire it, the developers will put in place long-term leases with, it's usually, to be honest with you, farmers that are the landowners. So that's something that kind of keeps us busy as well. Also, we have to connect these various different farms to the grid. So we have to put in place various different title rights to lay cables and infrastructure, which again can be a huge amount of work. So that was just some kind of areas of the property industry that I wanted to touch on that are kind of growing or, you know, stable, or that I think are going to be something to kind of watch in the future in a few different careers linked to those areas. So I'm now going to talk to you a bit more about women in property. So I'm just changing my slide. There we go. So who are women in property and what do we do? At our core, I would say we are a networking organisation. We were originally set up to give women in the industry a chance to meet and share ideas, but men are very much welcome to come along to our events, and they often do. Kind of feedback we get is that actually the men really enjoy our events, because I think quite a lot of the other property events can be quite sport or drinking focused, which I mean is great. Like we have those kind of events too, like we have gin tastings and wine tastings, and we've also done various different sporting events, like we've cycled at the velodrome and stuff like that. But we kind of also offer something a bit different, you know, more CPD events, more quite relaxed events. I would say there's quite a relaxed, friendly environment, which a lot of men tell us they really enjoy as well. We have over 1,000 members, and that's across the whole of the UK. We're multidisciplinary, so I will come on in the next slide to show you the breakdown of our membership by discipline, which will be hopefully interesting for you to see. But over the years, we have evolved quite a bit from being a kind of purely networking organisation, and we've become more involved in industry projects and campaigns. So we contributed to the Lord Davies report, which seeks to grow the number of women in UK boardrooms. And we've also contributed to the Women in Work All Parliamentary Group, which looks at the role of women in the economy, and also looks to address some of the barriers to full participation. I've obviously mentioned we host events, and we typically run about 450 events each year. Obviously this year we've had to move online, which has worked really quite well in some instances, well, most instances I would say. And our events range massively. So we have CPD events, as I mentioned. We've recently run a successful online climate crisis series, right through to social events. And I've mentioned obviously the gin tastings, wine tastings, but our kind of social calendar culminates in a dinner, which we have in February each year. We usually have kind of over 200 guests from all areas of the property industry, and it's either in Glasgow or Edinburgh. We kind of alternate each year. Luckily, we managed to host our 2020 annual dinner at the end of February, which was at the Balmoral last year. And I think that was probably the last big industry event that happened in Scotland before COVID hit. So we were very lucky that we managed to do that. We'll not be having our annual dinner this year for obvious reasons, sadly, but we do hope to return to in-person events in the latter half of this year, which I think we're all quite looking forward to. They tend to be really nice events hosted in some very nice places. We're lucky enough that our members have some very nice offices, and they're usually quite keen to let us use them. So Dentons have hosted a number of events, and also Cundles have, and actually curtains too, but Cundles have two, their engineers and sustainability consultants. So gives you a kind of flavour for the type of people you might meet if you came along to one of our events. I said earlier that there definitely has been some benefits to COVID, and I think one of the unexpected benefits for us has been having events online, which means that they can be accessed by members from any branch. So previously you would generally only go to events hosted by your local branch. So we're Central Scotland, so you would go to events in Glasgow or Edinburgh. But this year we've had people from the Highlands and Islands branch going to events hosted by some of our branches in London and vice versa, and before they just never probably would have had that opportunity. So it's worked quite well in that sense. And I think going forward, kind of to the latter half of the year, what we're thinking is probably going to happen is a bit of a hybrid model. So we will return to in-person events for quite a lot of our events, particularly networking, which is definitely easier to do in person. But we will still keep some of our events online. So some of our CPD events we think we'll still host online, which gives you more opportunity to attend a wider range of events, which should hopefully be good for everyone. I've touched on this as well, but we also have a mentoring programme which has been running for quite a number of years, and we match senior women in the industry with those at earlier stages of their career. We have an amazing woman called Sandy, who's very experienced in mentoring, who comes to do training for the mentoring. Generally, she's based in London, so generally because of geographical constraints, she would only maybe visit a branch once a year. But again, because of COVID this year and because we've taken the mentoring online, it's meant that she's been able to run a lot more sessions this year, which all of the branches have been able to access. So that's also something that's worked quite well. And I think that we possibly will continue once things return to normal. One thing as well for the students that's probably worth pointing out is that we do offer a student membership at a slightly reduced rate. And we also offer free or discounted access to certain events. So if you're interested in either becoming a member or coming along to one of our events, then please feel free to get in touch with me afterwards and I can give you some more details on that. So the next slide, which is hopefully coming up shortly. Here we go. So as I said earlier, we're a multidisciplinary organisation, and this slide here just shows the breakdown of our Central Scotland branch membership. So as you'll see, we are quite heavily numbered in terms of architects and lawyers, but we also are actually seeing a growing number of surveyors, project managers, planners, engineers, environmental consultants joining as well, which is great. And we have about 3.5% of our membership is made up from the category other, which kind of contains a wide ranging group of people. We've got construction companies in there like Morrison Construction. We've also got landscape architects, interior designers, so quite a wide range. Essentially anything that touches the property or the construction sector will mean you'll qualify to be a member. So it's a pretty wide membership. I also just wanted to touch very briefly on a couple of the photographs that we've got on this slide. So the bottom photograph is our annual dinner in February last year. So that's the committee, and as you can see, we were all dressed up for that, which was nice. Probably the last time I wore heels, I think. Feels like a lifetime ago. And the top photograph is from the one and only in-person event that I managed to host as chair. This was part of our Conversation With series, which is a series of conversations essentially with senior people in the industry. Anne Allen is the lady that I'm talking to in that photograph. She was then the head of estates at Glasgow University. And that event was hosted in the Corinthian in Glasgow, and we had a nice wine tasting actually after Anne and I had finished having our conversation. So that is pretty much it for my part of the presentation. I don't know if there's some questions in the chat box, Jennifer?
We don't have any questions at the moment. We do I've been corrected that we do have a law student, a current law student actually, who's in their third year and looking to do their dissertation in housing.
Okay.
Has anybody got any questions that they want to put to Rachel, either directly, or you can use the chat function?
Yeah, I have a question. Would the student discount be extended to account for the last year's graduates not being able to take advantage of being able to attend any of the events previously?
So the membership's like rolling for a year, so you would get the full benefit of a year from whenever you take on the membership. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
Okay, good.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask Rachel? Oh, we got one new message. So we've got a current civil engineering student on. Just wondering if this sector mainly involves us. So that probably goes back to the last slide that you shared, I guess, Rachel.
Yeah, so we've got engineers. So I don't know if I can go back. Don't know if I can go back, but no, we do have we've got quite a few engineers. Well, 9% of our membership's made up of engineers, and we've got several engineers in there as well. I actually think people shouldn't be put off by the high proportion of, like, so if there's only 9% engineers, which is actually not a bad number, I actually think that's a good thing, because if you're going to our events to network, then you're only kind of competing for business against 9% of the population that's there. Whereas if you're a lawyer or an architect, there's so many more people from your same profession. And actually, although networking with people from your profession is good if you're looking to move to like a different firm or something like that, then it can be good. And it can also be good just to make friendships with people that are in your profession. But actually, I think it's probably better to be, if you're an engineer, to be fostering networking with, say, planners or project managers, because then you're more likely to get involved in projects that they're involved in. Whereas if you're a lawyer, you're not going to recommend another lawyer necessarily for the same project that you're involved in. So yeah, it very much applies to engineers, and we do have several engineers as members.
Thanks, Rachel. We've also got a question asking, this is specific to Dentons, if Dentons offer an insight week, or I guess any sort of opening to...
Yeah, so we run a summer placement programme, which runs for 3 weeks, I think it is normally each summer, and it is quite a long process to sign up for it. But it's great in the sense that, so I think there's like a group interview day. There's obviously an application form, a group interview day, and then I think there's like an individual interview day as well. But the good thing about that is, once you're through the door, you do your 3-week placement, and then you don't need to be interviewed for a traineeship. So essentially, off the back of that, depending on how you perform in that 3-week period, you will just get offered a traineeship. So you don't have to go through the kind of horrendous process I went through of applying for traineeships, because you've kind of already done that. I think that's usually open to students between 3rd and 4th year, because we usually do recruit like a year or 2 in advance. So usually between 3rd or 4th year. But in saying that's the kind of formal programme that Dentons have in place, but we do quite often have work experience students that will come in that know somebody in the firm or whatever. So if there's anyone that wants to come in for work experience that wants to get in touch with me, I'm happy to see if I can arrange that. Although obviously right now it's kind of strange times, but yeah, after things return to normal, that probably won't be a problem.
Thank you. We've also got probably more of a comment, some feedback that this has been really interesting. I'm doing an MSc in project management, tuned in to see if property was somewhere I could continue my career, which I now know I can, which is great, as I thought perhaps real estate qualifications would be required. So thank you. So perhaps that's something we could touch upon, that real estate qualifications aren't necessarily.
No, not necessarily. I think, I mean, if you've got a project management qualification, brilliant, like if that's what your degree's in. But a lot of it's just experience. It's just getting out there, networking, meeting people, and yeah, getting your foot in the door and getting the experience. I think for me, that's what I've found to be the most useful in my career. I mean, obviously having the qualifications is great, and you do need those to an extent to open the doors, but in terms of actually doing the job, the practical experience I find is the most important.
Thanks, Rachel. We also have a question. I'm wondering if the training contracts available are only for graduates in law. I believe they are. Is that the case, Rachel?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different routes into law. You can do your undergrad and then your diploma, as I had done, or you can do an undergrad degree in a completely unrelated area, and then you can go and do an accelerated 2-year course, and then your diploma. So that's like a kind of postgraduate course, and then your diploma. Dentons are now offering an apprenticeship scheme, which means that you actually don't need to have, well, you do your degree, but you do it while working. So it's a slightly different route. The only thing I would say about that is that I would need to double check. I think that might just be for like school leavers potentially. So I don't know if that's available with a graduate degree. I would need to check, but I can check that and let you know, Jennifer.
Thank you. Another question specific to Dentons. So do Dentons have any in-house CAD technicians for drafting, or is it mainly engineers?
Do they have any in-house?
CAD, yeah, computer-aided design technicians, yeah.
So we have a pretty big like IT team. So I imagine some of them have some of those skills. We don't have a specific CAD team. We tend, like for real estate, we can outsource quite a lot of like the plans and stuff that we need to be produced. So they tend to be produced by like Registers of Scotland, for example. So we don't really have a specific need for a whole team. But there definitely are people within our IT team that have those capabilities, although probably not to the extent that someone that's fully qualified and works in that area full time would have.
Okay, thank you. But Registers of Scotland is one of the sort of bodies that you would work with who would provide that facility.
Yeah, they provide plans and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions from anybody? Okay, so I think at this point we're going to hand over to Vanessa, who's going to talk about Women in Property Student Awards. So Vanessa, I'll just make you host. Sorry, just bear with me. I'm just trying to reclaim the host from Rachel.
Okay.
There we go. There we go, Vanessa. That should be you.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Give me a second. Okay, so hopefully you can see my first slide.
Yeah.
You don't need to see my notes. Hopefully you can't see them.
No.
Okay, so good afternoon to everyone. My name is Vanessa Lancaster, as Jennifer said, and I'm the coordinator of our Student Awards programme, and it's just one of many initiatives that the association runs to support women coming into or returning to the industry. So the Student Awards is an important award for females, as the programme has been designed to be practical as well as an accolade, and our national sponsors are Bouygues and Savills, who some of you may know and heard of. And we work with both of those national sponsors and regional sponsors across the country to provide opportunities for work experience and placements to those students who take part in our awards programme. So the awards is open to female students in their third year of an undergraduate property or construction related degree. And in England, it's the second year. There's a slight difference. So why should you consider taking part, and why should your lecturer nominate you if you're eligible? Or perhaps you know an undergraduate on a built environment course who should be nominated. Well, women are historically reserved at speaking up and promoting themselves, and having the Women in Property nomination on your CV will make you stand out from the crowd. So you'll want to ensure your lecturer can support you throughout the nomination process, from checking your CV, which is so important, to giving critique on your presentation that you'll have the opportunity to give to a panel of judges made up from across the industry. And what do you get for this? Well, the regional winner will receive £500 and a trophy. The national winner from all our regions goes forward to London, and there's a prize of £1,000. There'll be assistance for summer work placements from both our national and local sponsors, as I've mentioned, and also the networks that we build up through our judges and regional sponsors. But also there's mentoring training, which Rachel has also mentioned. So for last year, as you can see, we had 124 students, and that's from 60 universities, and that's across the country. And year on year, we've built that up. And so this year, we've had nominations from 120 students and from about 60 universities. And we're delighted that once again, Curtains are going to be a regional sponsor. So the university receives recognition of exceptionally talented individuals and help in placing candidates in the workplace. And obviously the further links with both regional and national sponsors I've mentioned. And also obviously all the social media links, and Curtains are one of the sponsors for Central Scotland. So what do you need to do to be nominated? Perhaps you know someone who could be nominated, or speak to your lecturer about a nomination and start to research women in property. So go on Google, find our website, Twitter and LinkedIn, and speak with other students who've taken part, because they've been through it and they'll be able to tell you about the experience. So in 2020, it was Charlie Giddies, and this year, Kirsty Smith. Both of them studied civil engineering, and you can find a video of Charlie on our YouTube channel, which is Women in Property UK. And there's also videos of all our students who took part last year. So it gives you a real flavour of the courses and the students who took part. So lecturers receive in their inbox the paperwork around September each year, and it just enables them to speak with their students and prepare. And the students need to do a short CV and a presentation. Now, we don't ask the students to think of something new, base it on something they've not done. It'll be on a piece of coursework that you've already done. So you'll be familiar with the project, and it only needs to be 10 minutes. But you do need to pick something that inspires you as a student and will then grab the attention of the judges. But we do understand that some students, even the thought of giving a presentation can be slightly daunting. But I'm here as Student Awards Coordinator to guide you through the process all the way up to the interview day, which is taking place on Zoom. So we've grown the awards over the last 15 years, and each year all the students taking part have been really positive about the experience. And so previous students have commented it's a very professional award scheme. One student said this was her very first interview, but it wasn't intimidating. Another said she was made to feel comfortable and thought the interview was a good experience. I can tell you there are judges now who've received paperwork for the next few weeks, and they're probably more nervous than the students because they don't do it every day. So we're here to help you succeed as students who've been nominated. So Women in Property is all about nurturing the next generation through various initiatives. So not only our National Student Awards, but also schools outreach, networking parents, and building a better workforce. As Rachel said, all the people you meet through our events and the awards process can become part of the start of your professional network. So use social media wisely and keep in touch with people via LinkedIn. And it's important to remember that LinkedIn is a professional format. We're also on Twitter. But when you have a moment between your studies and getting some fresh air, take a moment to listen to some of our podcasts. So Against the Clock, how the COVID wards were built, and in particular, the win-win of employing graduates, which you can find on our website. And I can also recommend Maximising Mentoring with Sandy Rees-Jones. So we hope that you'll follow us on our various social media channels. And Rachel mentioned about some of our sponsors. I just wanted to touch upon some of our regional sponsors across the country who are helping us this year, promoting our events and sponsoring us and providing judges. So our main sponsors for the Student Awards are Bouygues and Savills, and they've been involved for many years. We've got Pinson Mason, Carla Holmes, Amazon, WSP, Blake Morgan, and Curtains in Central Scotland. And it's really important that we build those links with those companies. It's a two-way street, and they're really, really helpful. And meeting people from those organisations. And a lot of them are judges. And I just wanted to tell you a bit about the judging, which is actually happening now. So today we're in Yorkshire virtually, and all the students at the universities in that area, we actually have 2 days. And so those students who are being interviewed, I'll just give you a quick list of the subjects that they've been nominated for. So we have student architecture, urban studies, building surveying, structural engineering and architecture, architectural technology, human geography and planning, quantity surveying, and also real estate. And that's going to be a flavour throughout the country of all the students taking part. And do take a moment to look at our past winners. So our winner last year was from the South Wales branch region, and her name is Tamika Hull. And she was studying urban planning and development. And so she had an interview, she'd sent in her CV, she had a 10-minute presentation and then sort of 10 minutes chat to the judges, which was in person at that time. And she went forward to the national along with 12 other students and was our winner, crowned last September. So it's really important to be nominated and to take it seriously, because it's going to give you so many opportunities to meet people throughout the industry who may not give you a job this year or next year, but they're going to be your links. You might see them commenting on LinkedIn or doing some events. So it's really important to follow these people who may be able to help you as your career progresses. So I'll be going to be sending over to Jennifer later today or tomorrow a copy of these slides, and also some frequently asked questions you may not have thought about today, but we'd quite like to answer those. So I'd like to thank Jennifer for inviting us today, and we look forward to meeting the nominee from the University of the West of Scotland on the 16th of March, which is when the Central Scotland interviews will take place, and we wish her and the university every success. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Vanessa and Rachel, for your time this afternoon. I think everyone will agree it's been really useful, interesting. So I would definitely recommend everybody to have a look further into women in property. Vanessa, are the podcasts available to non-members?
Yeah, so if you go on to our website, home, and then it's initiatives, and it's all our podcasts are there. There's more than I've mentioned, and they're really worth a listen.
Great. And as Rachel's mentioned as well, there's a number of events that are free as well, and resources to non-members. And building a professional network, as Vanessa's talked about, is so helpful. It really is. And learning about different opportunities, different organisations. So thanks everyone for attending and for your time this afternoon. I just want to quickly say a couple of words about the careers service. So we are running a programme of virtual events throughout the rest of the year. So you can view those just by logging on to the Careers Centre, looking at events and virtual events. I know a number of you attended our Careers and Engineering Fair yesterday. We've also got another of these industry insights taking place next Tuesday, and that's FDM, talking about careers and technology. So do have a look, and also make use of the many plentiful resources on the Careers Centre website. Don't forget you can book one-to-one appointment with one of our careers advisors as well. If you've got any questions about any of that, then please just drop me an email. We've just got some comments there. Thank you for taking the time. That's Vanessa. Has anybody got any final questions before we close out today? Okay, I know we've run over slightly, so I just want to say thanks to everybody, and a big thank you to Rachel and Vanessa.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone listening.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Cheers. Bye.